Long-haired preachers come out every night, try to tell you what's wrong and what's right. But when asked about something to eat, they will answer with voices so sweet. You will eat by and by, in the glorious land in the sky, way up high, work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. And the Starvation Army they play, and they sing and they clap and they pray, till they get all your coin on the drum. Then they tell you when you're on the bum, you will eat by and by, in the glorious land in the sky, way up high, work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. Holy rollers and jumpers come out, and they holler and jump and they shout. But when eating time comes round, they say, you will eat on that glorious day. You will eat by and by, in the glorious land in the sky, way up high, work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. If you fight hard for children and wife, try to get something good in this life, you're a sinner and bad man, they tell. When you die, you will sure go to hell. You'll eat by and by, in the glorious land in the sky, way up high, work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. That's a lie. Working men of all countries unite, together we'll stand and we'll fight. When the world and its wealth we have gained, to the grafters we'll sing this refrain. You will eat by and by, when you've learned how to cook and to fry. Chop some wood, do you good, and you'll eat in the sweet by and by. That's no lie.
Amazed at what I am, I say what I think, that the company stinks. Yes, I'm a union man. When we meet in the local hall, I'll be voting with them all, with a hell of a shout. It's out, brothers, out, and the rise of the factories fall. Oh, you don't get me, I'm part of the union. You don't get me, I'm part of the union. You don't get me, I'm part of the union. Till the day I die, till the day I die. As a union man, I'm wise to the lies of the company spies, and I don't get fooled by the factory rules, 'cause I always read between the lines, and I always get my way if I strike for higher pay. When I show my card to the Scotland Yard, and this is what I say. Oh, you don't get me, I'm part of the union. You don't get me, I'm part of the union. You don't get me, I'm part of the union. Till the day I die, till the day I die. makes me some kind of Superman. Till the day I die. 500 men sacked for refusing to ever cross a picket line. Voices down the ages warning, never cross a picket line. You must never cross a picket line. Gone by, but still they never ever cross a picket line. With their wives and children they stand together. Look away out east to Osaka. For the truckers have organised the world's longest picket line.
We're starting in about a minute and a half.
Tories are gone, but there's no improvement. Never cross a picket line. Now where is the might of the Labour movement? Never cross a picket line. You must never cross a picket line. Look away, look away, look away down south to Auckland City. Look away, look away, look away out west to old Vancouver. With the dockers who've organised the world's longest picket line. For the dockers have realised you must never cross a picket line.
Probably asking yourselves who we are. Well, the Labor May Day Committee is a coalition of militant trade unionists, rank-and-file workers, and activists who wish to revive the traditions of May Day starting in Toronto and eventually hope to expand across the country and the world. Some of you may also be wondering, what is International Workers' Day and why is it celebrated? International Workers' Day, or May Day, begins in the late 1800s with Chicago workers engaged in a general strike to reduce the workday to 8 hours with no loss of pay. 4 days into the strike, workers rallied at the Haymarket Square. At the square, a provocation occurred that involved a bomb exploding, killing police officers and injured many workers. The situation escalated, and many workers were shot and killed on the spot by police officers. After the smoke cleared, trade union leaders were held responsible for the fiasco. They were tried and sentenced to death by hanging. 4 of them faced this penalty. They were then known as the May Day Martyrs. The aftermath of all this led to the Second International of Organized Labor and Socialists to mark May 1st as the day to commemorate those who died in the struggle for the 8-hour workday in Chicago. All over the world, May 1st would be adopted as a holiday remembering the May Day Martyrs. a victory for the working class. However, this was not the case in the United States and in Canada. At the time, US President Grover Cleveland fought adamantly against the day being a holiday with the support of right-wing trade union leaders. President Cleveland believed that commemorating the May Day martyrs would lead to the working class to adopt socialism and anarchism. So, to diffuse this revolutionary mood, at the time, Labor Day was created. Labor Day would be an end of summer celebration with unions parading along main roads with their banners, usually just an emblem and slogans that wouldn't contradict the interests of the working class, of the ruling class. So, harmless to the status quo, no revolutionary politics, just a parade and celebrating over a modest wage increase and a little more job security. No mention of any action against the attacks of the bosses. Comrades, don't get me wrong. These are important gains, but the working class cannot be paid off with this. And without revolutionary politics, the day loses its significance. Why are revolutionary politics important? I'll give you an example that has stayed with me for a while now. Labor Day, Toronto, 2018. The Ayatse Local 58 workers are locked out of the exhibition grounds. The exhibition is where the Labor Day parade ends, where it normally finishes. The Labor Day organizers took on a less confrontational approach and chose to have the parade just pass by the picket line of locked out workers and just wave and smile, and then finish elsewhere. If the politics of that committee were in line with that of ours, you could bet that these tens of thousands of workers marching would have joined the Ayatse Local 58 picket line. When we say workers of the world and oppressed people unite, this is what we mean. Over the last century, we've seen the growing contradictions that the capitalist system presents us with, and for that reason, we say fight capitalism. Capitalism has proven useless to the working class. It only benefits the few. In 1886, the workers were fighting for the workday to be reduced to 8 hours while still maintaining a living wage. It is 2020 now, and my union comrades and I over at QP 4400 line up to be on the overtime list. The same goes for unionized construction workers, transit workers, and other privileged members of the working class. Folks, we're not doing this because we're greedy. We're doing this so that we can match the cost of living. We're forced to work over 40 hours a week in order to do this, to sustain a normal lifestyle. Years of austerity and cuts from the capitalist system have clawed back all of the major gains workers have fought for, and now we're being sent back in time. So once again, this is why we say fight capitalism. Capitalism has also proven to fail us during the pandemic. COVID-19 didn't create the crisis. It was the growing contradictions of capitalism that left us unprepared to face COVID-19. The capitalist system is global. It is not subject to just one country. Another reason for our slogan, workers of the world and oppressed people unite. How do we unite against the system? We believe in the power of the general strike, and concretely speaking, we put forward the slogan, rally for stay-at-home strike, for full compensation and comprehensive PPE for all workers. We've seen the long-term care home lacking the necessary personnel and also lacking the necessary equipment for safety. And this has led to many deaths of residents. All of this caused for the sake of profits. The hospitals are lacking the necessary protective equipment and also lacking staff. Cuts and profits coming first has led to this. Transit workers facing many unsafe work conditions. Their workers have refused to be put under those unsafe conditions. And where was the neutral Ministry of Labor? In the comfort of their quarantine space, away from the job site, sending workers back to the grinder. They are not a neutral arbitrator, a collaborator of the bosses. Brothers, sisters, comrades, today we will hear from real militants, trade unionists, rank and file workers, activists, and artists, all here to give their perspectives on the current struggles against the bosses. Up first, we have YC Lee singing us the Internationale. Go ahead, YC.
My brother. Arriba los pobres del mundo, de pie los esclavos sin pan, y gritemos todos unidos, viva la internacional, removamos todas las trabas que nos impiden nuestro bien. Cambiemos el mundo de base, hundiendo al imperio burgués. Agrupémonos todos en la lucha final y se en los pueblos por la internacional. Agrupémonos todos en la lucha final y se en los pueblos comprador es la internacional. Debout les forçats de la faim, la raison tournant son cratère, c'est l'éruption de la faim. Du passé, faisant table rase, pour les slaves, debout, debout, le monde va changer de base, nous sommes rien soyons. C'est la lutte finale, groupons-nous et demain, l'international sera le genre humain. C'est la lutte finale, groupons-nous et demain, l'international sera le genre. Arise, ye prisoners of starvation, arise, ye wretched of the earth. For justice thunders condemnation, for a better world in birth. No more traditions chains shall bind us. Arise, ye slaves, no more enthralled. The earth shall rise on new foundations. We have been not, we shall be whole. 'Tis the final conflict. Let each stand in its place. The international working class shall be the human race. 'Tis the final conflict. Let each stand in its place. The international working class shall be the human race. Power to the people! Power to the people!
That was great. Now, that was the Internationale. That's the anthem, the international anthem for all the working class. Thank you, YC. Up next, we've got Jan Simpson, President of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. Here is a militant leader ready to speak for us. Hear what she has to say.
Hey, Jan, I'm going to unmute you here, okay? Jan, can you unmute yourself?
Okay. Thank you, Bruno. It's great to be here participating in this virtual rally with you to celebrate May Day. I would first like to acknowledge that I am on unceded Anishinaabe territory and to pay tribute to Indigenous peoples here and everywhere in this part of Turtle Island. Let us be guided by their wisdom. CUPW has a vision for the future. We want a Canada Post that reaches and supports the social growth of all communities across this country by expanding the services which they offer. Our Delivering Community Power campaign aims to reinvent Canada Post so that it can become a world leader in a just transition as we embrace environmentally friendly technology and combat the climate emergency. We fight for gig economy workers to have the same rights as everyone else. CUPW, other unions, and community organizations have done some incredible work. We should be proud, but we must also acknowledge that there still is so much more to do. Today's rally is an opportunity for us to inspire each other as we move forward during an unprecedented global crisis. We cannot go on today without mentioning the impact of COVID-19 on workers everywhere. Our sense of security and stability has been altered by this pandemic. CUPW represents workers in a variety of fields: postal workers, cleaners, medical dispatchers, couriers, who are still working and doing their part to flatten the curve, along with other frontline workers. And we must thank them. No matter who the employer is, our demand is the same. Workers must be protected, respected, and our health and safety must be essential, not just our labor. The pandemic has highlighted an important truth. The least paid and least esteemed workers are vital to our society and economy. This means that workers must have access to personal protective equipment, access to provisions so they can self-isolate or quarantine as needed without fear of consequences or loss of wages. They must also have access to the latest knowledge of their rights, the protocols, and the steps they can use when they have concerns. CUPW has a landing page on our website with the latest COVID-19 related information. We are making sure our members feel empowered to use their voice during this crisis. We know that collective action works and can force change on the work floor and beyond. The pandemic has affected each and every one of us. It's a very difficult time, and we are all very scared. COVID-19 can be a turning point. We are seeing how the environment can heal itself. We are witnessing the power of community support and solidarity as we all work to flatten the curve. We are seeing wages being increased and housing being provided. How long have we been telling the government that this was possible and that it should have been done? Just a few days ago, Fedora, a food delivery company, decided it was going to close its stores because it was not making enough money in the Canadian market. In the middle of a pandemic, this company valued numbers over human lives. They gave the workers 2 weeks notice. As wealthy as the Fedora company is, it has filed for bankruptcy with their parent company, Delivery Heroes, boasting over $1 million in profits. Foodsters, the organizing food couriers who work for Fedora, did not lose hope. They are standing strong and are continuing to organize and support each other. They actually had a rally this afternoon. CUPW is proud to be working with them to ensure Fedora is being held accountable. The news of Fedora's closures only comes a few months after the Ontario Labour Relations Board ruled that couriers working for Fedora are dependent contractors and have the legal right to unionize. This was a historic win for the workers, but especially for the whole labor movement. This is the beginning for better protection for all gig economy workers. Therefore, we must not give up. We cannot stop fighting. Foodsters are not done fighting, and they need our support. I encourage you to go to their website, foodsterunited.ca, and see how you can support them. This is a perfect example of corporate greed, but as disappointing as it is, we must remember that no unionization drive has ever been easy. It is the solidarity, courage, sacrifice, and collective effort of each and every one of us that is to ensure this change must happen. This is just the beginning. Foodsters, gig workers, warehouse workers, and others, we are not done here. The working class has a lot more work to do. This pandemic has changed many things, but it has also brought us closer together. National Day of Mourning was on April 28th. Earth Day was last week, and as of today, May 1st, it is Asian and South Asian Heritage Month. All of these yearly events take on a new meaning in the context of a pandemic, and it is the key that we underscore all these dates. We know now better than ever that an injury to one is truly an injury to all. The health and safety of workers must be a priority. Personal protective equipment must be available and accessible. We cannot allow more workers to be injured, disabled, or lose their life at work. We see now, as the world has self-isolated and locked itself down, that the environment can recover. A just transition will prepare us for the future and will help us mitigate the consequence of the current environment and climate emergency. Large corporations and the Canadian government must address these issues as they look to reopen the economy. In the middle of a pandemic, we have seen communities stand together, but we have also heard, and some people say, display gross discriminatory behavior. During this month of Asian and South Asian Heritage Month, we must take time to aim to become better allies and learn about our sisters and brothers and comrades who contribute to our society every day. These are difficult times, but we must stand together. We will flatten the curve, we will fight discrimination, and we will fight the greedy corporations, and we will protect all workers' rights. Solidarity.
Very good, Jen. Thank you. That was amazing. And yes, while the COVID crisis does bring us a lot of negative, a lot of obstacles, we can get some good things out of it. We've seen the power of the working class and how we unite. Specifically, speaking of this event, when we're well organized, we can't be stopped. So, up next, I've got I've got Carlos Santos, the president of the Allied Transit Union of Workers, Local 113. This is the union that represents the TTC workers. There is another union at the TTC that is QP Local 2. The ATU Local 113 is the larger one. And we do have a speaker from QP Local 2, but they will be presented later. So for now, Carlos Santos, take it away.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. So I'm Carlos Santos, president of ATU Local 113, Amalgamated Transit Union. You've probably seen us on the news a lot lately. I can tell you we've been fighting just to wear masks even before COVID-19 with the air quality issue on the subway, and it was proven that we do have an air quality issue, and the company still didn't want to allow us to wear masks, which is quite unbelievable. The first time I've put out any type of press release or spoken to the media was January 29th, just to be allowed to wear PPE. And it's pretty disgraceful that it took until March 18th just for us to be allowed to wear masks. And by the time we were allowed to wear masks, we couldn't even, our members were complaining of not even being able to get them anymore. They were gone. You couldn't find them. And it's just really unbelievable. It took, I was at Wilson Division one night, all night, because 3 operators wanted to wear a mask. I was at Queensway Garage. We had 6 people testing positive for COVID. They didn't want to shut it down. We've been all over the place. We've been fighting tooth and nail just for rear door loading, just to eliminate cash fares, just to eliminate. So they eliminated. They eliminated cash fares, they eliminated transfers, but they didn't eliminate cash fares. So people were paying and they were asking for a transfer, which is it just goes to show you how the TTC thinks. They don't even know what they're doing. We've been facing a lot of health and safety issues. I was at Queensway Garage on the 18th. I stayed there till 5 a.m. It seems like the Ministry of Labor, they do not attend. They do these interviews on the phone, which is quite comfortable of them. And then they rule against us. And lo and behold, I get a letter an email saying, "Dear union leader," not even Carlos Santos, "Dear union leader, we're asking you to self-isolate because you were potentially exposed." But here's the kicker. Management that was in the same room with us for 14 hours were not asked to self-isolate or stay home or even go out and get tested. They ended up being just sent to a different location. So it seems like there's a double standard for workers and and employees or for management. And it's really frustrating after everything that we've had to do, everything we've had to fight for. We've had to fight to get the driver area blocked off. We've had to fight for masks. We've had to fight for hand sanitizers. We've had to fight for gloves. After all that, and I mean months of fighting, and you guys have probably seen it on the news, to all of a sudden hear about layoffs when they've meticulously said 1,000 operators and 200 staff, but they can't name us the staff, which we believe that there is going to be no staff that's going to be laid off. We believe that it's going to be just operators. The TTC cannot tell us which staff is being laid off because I don't even think they're going to be laying off staff. What I'm being told is that there's just 200 unfilled positions in management, and they've been saving those, and they're just going to, instead of laying off, they're just going to relocate management. So at the end of the day, the frontline workers, the ones that are working every day, going to work every day, 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning, taking people where they have to be, potentially being exposed. We're getting pink slips after everything that we've done for this city. And I don't want to just take credit. Everybody's a hero in this. Healthcare workers, grocery workers, everybody, people that are working in a variety of different industries. But at the end of the day, we're being screwed, and we are being screwed about money. We walked into a meeting to resolve some health and safety issues, and before we can even say a word, we're being asked to give up concessions. It's quite embarrassing on the part of the TTC. It's quite embarrassing that they even want to bring up money issues when people are scared to go to work and scared for their lives. It's just completely ridiculous. I'm still seeing photos of packed buses till this day, and now they announced that they want to reduce service. So lay off members that have been working their butt off, mind you, and reduce service for the public. So not only is it hurting our members, it's hurting the public. And our citizens of Toronto, they've been shortchanged on transit for decades. And it's just it breaks my heart to see that not only are our members getting laid off, but the citizens of Toronto are not getting the transit that they deserve. And it's really frustrating. We're going to keep doing what we have to do. But I can tell you one thing, everything that we've accomplished has been through, and unfortunately, I have to say this, it's been through work refusals. If we didn't have those work refusals, we wouldn't have won the mask issue. If we didn't have those work refusals, now the TTC has to provide face shields as well. So everything that we have won, we've tried to work with the company. I've even mentioned that we're trying to work with the company, but it seems like they don't want to work with us. And this is not just us. This is the struggle that every worker is facing in the world. And it's quite shameful that we have to resort to these tactics just to get anything done and anything accomplished. And I had to publicly say 10 people on a bus. And if you think that's not going to come back, wait till we get service reductions. More than 10 people, don't move that bus. That's going to be my instruction, because at the end of the day, that's the law. Physical distancing. We're supposed to practice physical distancing. I don't want my members getting a ticket for not practicing physical distancing. So I'm honored to be here. Who would have ever thought this would have been an online rally? But what can we do? We have to roll with the punches, and hopefully next year we'll be out of this and we can march down some main street and disrupt who needs to be disrupted and who needs to be woken up. But again, I want to thank the Labor Day Committee for inviting me. I'm honored to be here. It's my first time. Thank you very much, and we'll talk in solidarity.
Thank you, Carlos. Great speech.
You're
That
welcome.
was, very informative, and explaining to everyone that's here as to what's happening. And unfortunately, the best any frontline worker can get is to be told that they're a hero. And what does this do? It sends a message across to everyone that says, it's okay for them to die because they're heroes, or get sick, or this sort of thing. And that's not right. That's not right. We don't want to be labeled as heroes. We want to be safe, because there's no need to be labeled as a hero, right? So, but of course, the work that the healthcare workers, the transit workers, and the grocery workers out there risking their lives must be acknowledged. So the next speaker that I'm going to present is from a healthcare worker. Natalie Mera sits on the executive of the Ontario Health Coalition. Natalie's going to tell us all about what's happening over with the healthcare workers. Take it away, Natalie.
Thank you. I'm not actually a healthcare worker, but I do work with the Ontario Health Coalition, and here today, memorializing and taking inspiration from the tremendous workers' struggle of May 1886. I just feel very honored and very humbled to have been invited to speak, and I'm very happy to do it. I really think that we have to pay tribute to the memory of the workers who died at the Haymarket riot, killed by police. and all of the workers who have been killed or have died in the struggle for better wages and working conditions, for democracy in the workplace, for better work and for social justice. I was doing an interview today, and I have to apologize at the very outset because I want to see all the speakers. I really would stay, but I have to leave very quickly to go and do a CBC interview. We're just utterly swamped right now. But I was speaking with CTV earlier today, and they asked me, you know, how are you responding to what the Ford government has done and to what's happening in healthcare? And I had to say that I was, of course, unspeakably sad. You know, the words cannot express, as we're tracking all of the cases in outbreaks in healthcare settings and congregate care settings. It is beyond overwhelming. But I'm also so angry, and I had to tell them there is no way that this should have happened. Of course, we could not avoid a pandemic. But there is no way that what we are seeing today, the carnage, the fact that COVID-19 is raging through Ontario's, Quebec's long-term care homes, retirement homes, and even hospitals in Quebec particularly, could have been avoided. The hundreds of people who are dying in those homes, in those places of care and places of work, could have been avoided and should have been avoided. And I think as we think about May 1st, we need to challenge ourselves to think about how we are going to build the kind of struggle that ensures that this will never happen again. You know, I've been proud. I've been doing this work for 25 years, 20 years as the executive director of the Health Coalition. We have mobilized in the hundreds of thousands. We have held rallies. We've held, you know, referendums to stop privatization. We have stopped privatization in the hospital sector. By and large, we've protected single-tier Medicare. But restructuring, constant, endless restructuring, austerity has continued to eat away at the conditions for the workforce and the conditions of care. In healthcare, the conditions of care are the conditions of work. They're one and the same. And we have solidarity in the demands for improvements across, from family members to patient advocacy groups to the seniors groups to all of the major healthcare unions, a number of private sector unions and public sector unions, the health professionals, physicians who are, believe in public Medicare are working together to push for improvements. I just want to very quickly run through, as of today by our tracking, there are more than 5,000 healthcare workers in hospitals, long-term care homes, retirement homes, other congregate care settings and clinics and so on infected. Patients and residents infected. There are more than 2,000 staff infected. There are more than 700 dead. I wanted to say today, in memory of Arlene Reed, who was a PSW, who worked multiple jobs in home care and healthcare facilities, in memory of Christine Mandagarian, I knew I was going to do that, who was also a PSW who worked in long-term care. We have to remember that the struggle in 1886, the riots, the general strike, the strikes in Chicago were a demand for an 8-hour work day. These people work 12-hour shifts at minimum. Many work precarious work in multiple healthcare facilities, as has been laid bare for everyone to see. They are racialized workers, overwhelmingly in the PSW roles. They are women. They are underpaid. Increasingly, their work is precarious. Healthcare cuts have come by cutting the public system in hospitals and offloading that work and that care into much lower funded care areas. And that has been accomplished by deregulating the workforce, by making more work precarious. Here we are 140 years after the events of the Haymarket riots, talking about May Day. We have to be talking about what we've lost. The fact is, there is no 8-hour workday for these workers. There's no 40-hour work week. Their work is relentless. Today, they're going into work in garbage bags in some long-term care homes because there's a shortage of gowns and PPE. People are losing their lives, staff and residents and patients alike. If we leave this day, it has to be that as the drumbeat to open the economy gets ever louder, we must make our drumbeat louder. Let's take inspiration from the militant struggles that one gains a century and a half ago, we cannot allow again for the vagaries of the market to take over, for unfettered greed, for unfettered capitalism to rule. I hope that that's the message we take from today. And thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
Thank you, Natalie. I could just adjust my sound here. That was very moving. And thank you for giving the details, because we all know the media isn't telling us everything. And getting, an inside perspective from, well, of course, the executive of the Ontario Health Coalition, that's going to tell us exactly what's going on. And so while we do know we're facing many troubles with this crisis in our health network, we see more through the perspective of the healthcare coalition and the healthcare workers. And based on everything you've just said, it's proven exactly what's mentioned, and it keeps reoccurring that where profits come first, it leads to disasters in our services. And it's not the COVID that caused the problem. It's the greed, the capitalist system putting profits before people. I just want to thank you once again, Natalie, for showing up, for coming here and speaking to everyone. So up next, I've got a militant activist, friend of mine, comrade. He's an editor of the organization Fight Back, a very militant group, and his name is Alex Grant. Alex has much experience, more than valuable experience in the labor movement. Once was a president of a QP local out in BC. And so it would be appropriate for Alex to be here speaking, not just as an activist, but as a former union leader. Take it away, Alex.
Thank you, Bruno. And happy International Workers' Day. Happy May Day. And I'm so proud to be part of this effort to make this day a fantastic success. So many participants in the meeting, on YouTube, on Facebook, thousands of people joining us here for what is a fundamentally anti-capitalist May Day. That COVID has shown us that capitalism does not care about working class people. For them, working class people are just expendable adjuncts of the machine. And so many decades of austerity, everything they've done in the COVID crisis have shown that they put profits before people. For example, in the 1980s in Canada, there was 6.3 beds, hospital beds, per 1,000 people. After 30 years of austerity, now that's down to 2.4 beds per 1,000. Insufficient, totally insufficient for the crisis. And the healthcare workers, like the speaker who came before, are facing the brunt of that crisis. Again, in this specific crisis, they were given warnings, the governments were given warnings in January that the pandemic was coming. What did they do? Nothing. Did they store PPE? No. Did they make the preparations? Did they solve the crisis in long-term care? No. No, they insisted on part-time work, low pay, low conditions, no PPE, and now 2 workers have died. 2 workers have died in long-term care in Ontario, and the blood is on the hands of the bosses who are running the system and underfunding it, not providing the funding. You see Cargill, the meatpacking plant in Alberta, many immigrant workers, temporary foreign workers, I think many of them are Filipinos, 2,000 workers packed together, butchering meat, and despite being warned by the union, what did the Labour Board do? Well, they did a safety check over FaceTime and deemed the place safe, even though it wasn't safe enough for them to come themselves. Totally disgusting. And now 3 workers have died. Over 500 are infected because they've been packing people together like they are meat. The bosses and bankers don't see working class people any different from the meat carcasses that they are butchering. So we have to have a fundamentally anti-capitalist perspective. We also have to understand that COVID did not cause this crisis. It was actually the trigger of this crisis, but this was a classic capitalist crisis of overproduction in preparation. Go to our website, marxist.ca and marxist.com. You will see we have been predicting this crisis for a long time, that all the contradictions are coming to the fore of capitalism. It was just looking for a spark, and COVID is that spark. We are entering into, sad to say, a new Great Depression. A new Great Depression. The government is putting in deficits of something like $250 billion. Significant deficits. Who are they going to make pay for that? Is it going to be bosses, or is it going to be working class people? They're going to try and make us pay. And we say, hell no. Hell no, are they going to make us pay? The austerity has already begun. 1,200 layoffs in the city of Vancouver, 30% budget cuts in Manitoba. The TTC layoffs, yes, 1,200 workers there. We've got to say no. The bosses are sitting on dead money of over $1 trillion, uninvested mound of cash that they will not invest, cannot invest, and we say make the bosses pay. Lives come before corporate profit. And they want to try and reopen the economy over the bodies of working class people. We say, hell no. The only time any company, any workplace should open is if the workers say so. You cannot trust these corporations. They're sitting comfortably in their homes in isolation, where it's the workers on the front line that actually make society run. Those people on the front line, they should decide whether it opens, not the bosses, not the bankers. And we need to fight for a socialist revolution. Socialism, bring down this rotten system, because they cannot be trusted. They cannot run the economy. They will try to make us pay. We will not pay. Hell no, we won't let that happen. We're going to fight back. We're going to fight for socialism. And if you agree with what I said, come to our website, marxist.ca, and join our fight. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Alex. Very moving. So you heard it. Lots of examples there. Here, right, bang right on. The capitalist system is not giving us the defense we need against this crisis. And so what are we left with? Well, we must organize, and we must fight for socialism to get us there, to get past this. Now, the next speaker is a former trade unionist with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, current activist with Socialist Action. It is Elizabeth Weiss. Elizabeth, go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Weiss, and I'm coming to you live from Montego Bay, Jamaica. I'm speaking for Socialist Action. Yes, you're right, brother. I'm a retired member of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers and a past secretary of Toronto, New York Region Labour Council. Socialist Action has been in the forefront of May 1st actions for decades. Clearly, this is a May Day like no other. Presently, the world working class is living through a stunning health crisis that has cost hundreds of thousands of lives. COVID-19 springs from the bowels of the capitalist mode of production. Toxic agribusiness practices put profit before public safety. Giant corporations deforest the earth, rob it of nutrients, and pour poison into the soil, water, and air. Debt, waste, and inequality has already put the world on course for a great recession last fall. The coronavirus pandemic made things much worse, plunging humanity into global depression. Bourgeois politicians claim to care, while they buy oil pipelines, trample indigenous people, and sell weapons of mass destruction. Inequality surges, aider stoke fairs. Racism, sexism, and homophobia rise. Human civilization is at risk. The choice is socialism or barbarism. If we are to survive, revolutionary change is urgent. Vital to the change we need is international working class solidarity. International Workers' Day was born in 1886, arising from the struggle for the 8-hour day. It celebrated the Paris Commune. Later, it defended the Russian Revolution, the struggle against fascism, and subsequent triumphs of the working class in China, Vietnam, and Cuba. On this day, we stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people for boycott, divestment, and sanctions against the Zionist apartheid state, and with Venezuela against imperialist intervention. We condemn the criminal blockades imposed by Ottawa, Washington, and the EU, who targeted countries for regime change because they stand in the way of imperial super profits. More than ever, it is clear that capitalism is a dying system that threatens to destroy nature and humanity. What should we call it when capitalist government cut funding to public health services and medical research, when they fail to provide productive care, while brave personal care workers are limited to part-time hours and are paid low wages with no benefits? What is it when the rulers close borders to starving millions displaced by war and climate change caused by the GT? I won't mince words. I call it murder, mass murder, rooted in capitalism. But there is an alternative to this genocidal system, a rational, democratic, and cooperative alternative, socialism. To achieve socialism, it is vital that we advance concrete transitional demands to increase the confidence and capacity of the working class to achieve change, to win. Socialist action demands basic income for all, regardless of immigration status. Nationalize Big Pharma. Put a moratorium on residential rents and mortgage payments. No evictions. Cancel student debt. Make education free. Build quality social housing on a mass scale. Tax the rich. Expropriate the big banks to join oil and gas corporations. Use those resources to fund mass testing for COVID-19, to develop a vaccine, and to encourage farmers to grow healthy food. The present mode of production is capitalism for the poor and socialism for the rich. It must be replaced by a cooperative commonwealth, a genuine economic democracy. But the rich and the powerful will resist it tooth and nail. Only a socialist revolution led by a mass revolutionary workers' party, deeply rooted in the majority class, can overcome the powers of the elite. Only in that way can we release the full potential of humanity in harmony with nature. Today, we are showing the bosses that we will not retreat, that the working class will continue to struggle for socialism, for freedom from all forms of oppression, for peace, social justice, and equality. We warmly welcome you to watch the Socialist Action Workers' Day celebration full of song and solidarity tomorrow night on our YouTube channel at 7 p.m. and to join Socialist Action. Long live workers' solidarity. Long live the world's socialist revolution. A red, happy May Day.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You said it. I'd just like to point out that as we speak today, the Amazon workers, and I believe in the United States, Amazon workers and Whole Foods workers as well are on strike. I believe they don't have a union. This is the non-organized workers organizing together against the bosses. So, you know, we're seeing this happening, and on what better day than International Workers' Day? So, yes, we have to be prepared for everything that's coming, for what's happening around the world. And as the speakers before previously have said, it's the one solution is, well, socialist revolution. Up next, I've got from Hamilton, federal NDP Member of Parliament, Matthew Green.
Thank you so much, Bruno, for having me on. Thank you to Jahan, Moxie, and all of the incredible Socialist Action organizers, both here in Hamilton, who have had the privilege of working alongside now for the better part of the last 5 or 6 years, but certainly your advocacy online and through your print newsletter is very much appreciated. I am here from the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee, who are governed by the dish with one spoon, who is a reminder long before the Marxist theories that the indigenous folks were talking about, only taking what you need and leaving the rest behind. It is a phenomenal reminder to situate this conversation. I want to thank all the previous speakers. I have had the privilege of working with Jan and Carlos. Sister Elizabeth got me all fired up. It's Friday and it's May Day on the same day. And I've been doing these Zooms for the last 4 weeks. Well, what a perfect opportunity to be in a collective conversation with 200 comrades from across the country country to talk about the political moment that we're in right now. Make no mistakes about it. We have the opportunity within the chaos and the disruption that capitalism has laid bare to so many people who may not have been alive to their own class consciousness. The white collars, the folks who were, told the lie that if they left their industrial labor pursuits and followed the .com and the tech boom of the 90s, that they would ascend their class and find this mythical middle class. And what they have found in a very sharp and acute way is that this system of liberalism have left them wholly out of the equation. That every single step along the way, every policy that this liberal government has put forward has been designed to exclude people. That when they make announcements with big dollar figures, what's often hidden is the cost that it has on the working class. And so I know that the radical politics that are here sometimes creates an environment where we spend more time critiquing ourselves than we do about actually going after the enemies of the working class people. That there will be an entire generation of people who you may have once considered to be bourgeoisie who have been left out of this capitalist system, that the 87 families who have more wealth than the bottom earning 12 million Canadians is more apparent now than it's ever been. And that's why I'm proud to say that we have the opportunity to rebuild this country in a way that claims power. And quite rightly, it's not about reclaiming power, because I'm unsure in Canada that workers have ever truly had power in elected government or in the various levels of government. But we do have the opportunity through political participation, through extra parliamentary direct action, to get the goods in this moment. Make no mistakes about it, comrades. The culture war is going to ramp up. Capitalism is on its last legs, and it will be violent, perhaps more violent than it's ever been. We've seen it already, these conversations of stark austerity, where there's actually a mainstreaming, a platform of a consideration that these capitalists, these wolves of Bay Street, would actually sacrifice our most vulnerable people to send us back into this working economy. So for those who gather here today that say enough is enough, for those who have spent decades organizing on the front lines, the elders of this movement, the young people who have just tuned in and have inherited one of the most precarious economies in generations, I'm going to borrow off of Brother Fred Hampton and say, I don't care how much theory we have in this room. If we don't put it into practice, if we don't apply it, then that theory is irrelevant, right? Any theory that we have to practice, and we have to know that we're going to make mistakes. We have to give ourselves permission to make mistakes in these critical moments, but to know that when we correct those mistakes in a way that is through solidarity, in a true solidarity of love, and not one of this like petty bickering that we often fall ourselves into, this sectarian need to always be right, that we have to push through this time, and we have to come out on the other end with a greater solidarity, with a bigger tent that's going to include more people, the masses that we know that we need in order to win this struggle. And it's through that shared struggle that I do believe that the moment is here. Alex put it out there in a very compelling way, that there has to be a shift, that we have to have an economy that is democratic. We must have an economy that centers the planet and the people. Otherwise, we are going to face sure destruction through extractionary capitalism, through catastrophic climate change, and through ongoing pandemics like we've seen today. Thank you so very much for having me on. I know that I'm at my 5 minutes. Bruno, Jahan, and others, everybody who made today possible. Let's not leave this to May Day. Let's find ways to continue to socialize and organize and mobilize from this day forward. Solidarity to everybody who's out there today. Keep up the fight and do not lose hope. We're just at the beginning of this struggle.
Thank you, Matthew. Solidarity. Now, what celebration would it be without more music? So up next, we've got Muhammad Ali performing to us Democracy Now!
want to shout out, like always, Matthew Greens. Always an honor to perform after Matthew. And also, really quickly, Amir and I want to say something. Happy International Workers' Day.
Happy May Day.
And thank you to all the organizers. I know there's so many of y'all, so many comrades that made sure that May Day is still alive, even in such troubling times. And without further ado, you ready?
Yeah.
Would you send your future son out to Ferguson? Would you see the front line or be the first to run? Would you still rally if the battle won't be won? Ferguson, Ferguson, this goes up to Ferguson, because they got me putting rent up on my visa. Sky is the limit, they don't want to see us reach it. They want to keep us down, they want to keep it secret. The people, united, will never be defeated. All the way at the top, they don't see it. Champagne by the leaders, elitists. Sick of broken treaties, sick of how they treat us.
The people, united, will never be defeated.
New mathematics, we the millions, we the masses. Without wonder, we outnumber millionaires across the planet. We parse poetics, it ain't even positive. We politic in places, they ain't talking politics. Park benches, coffee shops, street corner barber shops. Real life, it's really like I really hate my boss. But people sick and tired because they're always sick and tired. We so sick of these liars, so we turning freedom fires. We try to spark fires, strength in number of the solution. The power of the people stronger than people in power. They're powered by the people. We put those people in power. 99 for everyone. That's mighty fine. We like the odds. 99% of the world, the time is ours. Money, power, respect. Money, power, respect. Money, power, respect. Just keep it all in. Money, power, respect. Money, power, respect. Money, power, respect. They just keep it all in. Because they got me putting red up on my visa. Sky is the limit. They don't want to see us reach it.
They want to keep us down. They want to keep it secret. To keep folk united, will never be defeated.
All the way at the top, you don't see it. Champagne by the leaders. All my leaders is elitists. Sick of broken treaties. Sick of how they treat us. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people
united will never be defeated.
The people united
will never be defeated.
Amir Omir, Muhammad Ali, the Socialist Vocalist. You can find my music online at Socialist Hip Hop on all social media handles. We don't have to do a fist bump, but you can if you want. And finally, I just want to say one last thing. If you want some good revolutionary music, if you love good anti-racist music, you're a fan of Rage style, Public Enemy style records, in the next few months, I'll be dropping my next single, Make Racists Afraid Again, at Socialist Hip Hop. Muhammad Ali, the Socialist Vocalist.
Amir Omir.
Peace, love, solidarity.
Thank you, Muhammad Ali. Much love. Solidarity. Well, up next, we've got an executive member of CUPE Ontario, and also who sits on the executive of the Ontario Federation of Labor, Tiffany Balducci.
Wow, hi there. It's so wonderful to be here, and that's amazing to have seen that virtually coming together. So I'm Tiffany Balducci, and I'm 4th Vice President for CUPE Ontario and a Vice President for Labor Councils at the Ontario Federation of Labor. And I'm the President of Durham Region Labor Council. I'm also a settler here and an uninvited guest on the unceded land we call Canada. Thank you so much to the organizers for putting on this amazing event. It's so important for us to connect and celebrate our movement and collective power on this special day and organize towards a better future for all. Of course, this is a very different May Day and a very different way of coming together. COVID-19 has remade the world in a blink of the eye, and many aspects of our lives are in crisis. Some of us are isolated at home, some are working in horribly stressful and dangerous conditions that we've already heard about on the front lines, and all of us feel anxious about what tomorrow will bring, which is why we need to be here to support each other on May Day and beyond. The labor movement began marking this day in a time when even speaking about collective action and solidarity was a crime. So as unionists, we aren't strangers to struggle. The bravery and commitment of those who came before us meant that on every new May Day, we weren't just supporting each other in struggle, but began to celebrate victories for working people as well. And I'm going to tell you a bit about a recent victory we had in Oshawa, in large part due to collective action. Our Labor Council has been involved in a coalition called Green Jobs Oshawa for just over a year now. I think many of you follow us, and I appreciate all the support that we've had over this last year. Green Jobs Oshawa is a coalition of workers, community leaders, environmentalists, labor and social justice advocates, all working towards the common goal of placing the now pretty much empty Oshawa Assembly facility under public ownership in order to repurpose it for socially beneficial manufacturing. Lately, since March, we pivoted and we're calling on all levels of government to make essential medical supplies for essential workers at the plant in Oshawa. We had a petition, we had a virtual press conference, much like this. We worked with organizations like the LEAP and the Council of Canadians and our local MPP, Jennifer French. After 2 weeks of pressure from the Oshawa community, General Motors announced on April 24th that it would reopen a portion of the plant to manufacture 1 million masks per month for healthcare workers. The COVID-19 pandemic proves it is not impossible for manufacturing industry to shift gears in a short amount of time, which needs to happen to address the climate crisis. We know it can happen relatively quickly, especially when it's medical equipment that you're making, but we also know that it proves that it's not impossible to retool it for other socially beneficial products, like eventually electric vehicles for the public sector, like transit or postal vehicles. Right now, GM will only manufacture level 1 masks. We believe GM should also manufacture N95 masks and ventilators and communicate directly with frontline healthcare workers to determine what other medical supplies are needed. Green Jobs Oshawa will continue to push for public ownership of the plant. If it's under public ownership, then it can be the basis for expanding and becoming an important manufacturing center that provides a security of supplies for future crises. We all know that it can't happen if it's left up to a corporation that's always driven by maximizing their own profits. Of course, we are pleased with GM opening a corner of the 10 million square foot facility. It's a great first step. It shows what is possible with the power of collective action and not giving up. We've been told that it was a pipe dream or pie in the sky by various labor leaders sometimes even, and we didn't give up and we're not going to give up. We have ideas for others on this call. You could consider having conversion committees in your community to address immediate needs like medical equipment right now, of course, following all safety practices, and keep our production facilities in place rather than lose this capacity, and prepare for conversion to environmental products, as everything about how we live, work, travel, play will be transformed. These committees can work with allies to focus on social needs related to their work. What kind of products could they make if necessary? What kind of services could they provide to their communities? How can it tackle the climate catastrophe? Labor councils are a great place where this could start. I also have a tangible ask. If you're in the area near Oshawa on Saturday, May 9th, we will be meeting in our vehicles safely, yet again, for a worker solidarity cavalcade expressing solidarity between essential services and essential products and our communities more generally. So if you're in the area and can safely come out and make a sign of support for the side of a vehicle, some ideas for the signs could be: we need N95 masks, essential production for essential workers, protect essential workers, mandate corporations, not workers. We'll be meeting at 1:30 p.m. on Saturday, May 9th at the staging location of Alexandra Park Baseball Diamond off Buckingham Avenue in Oshawa for a cavalcade that will go beyond the hospital, local long-term care facilities, and ending up in the GM plant parking lot as a show of class solidarity. And I just want to mention that May Day is a time to honor past victories, but its true purpose is to bring our message to the world about the future that we've heard about already, the future that we can have beyond capitalism. And I want to make sure that we mention that this future doesn't leave anyone else out. I want to call people's attention to the demands of the Migrant Rights Network, where they're demanding for decent work, universal services, status for all, justice for all, and no displacement. We have to support each other against the virus, but into the future. And what our future holds can seem very far away, but there are signs that it's much closer than many of us would have imagined months ago. We've heard that the COVID-19 pandemic shows that capitalism fails workers. We knew that capitalism already was failing workers, but there's hope and new exciting ways of organizing. Payday Report currently has a map of over 100 worker strikes, walkouts, sickouts, and protests over COVID-19 issues across many sectors that we've heard about already. We know there's a general strike going on today with workers in Amazon. It's going to be essential to have a full accounting of all the labor movement strikes, protests, and negotiations that made things safer for workers during this time. This kind of tracking is critical since it's unlikely that these actions will make it into official government data. Moreover, a crisis such as this is often a call to action for people who are looking for answers and offers new opportunities to organize workers and make big changes in society. We are at a demarcation in time. Just as with the Great Depression nearly a century ago, we may be at the beginning of a new era of class struggle that could remake the labor movement and the world. And we all know that the only way through this crisis is the way that we have dealt with every challenge since the first May Day well over 100 years ago, together in solidarity. We also know that the solidarity won't end with the pandemic. Thank you again to the organizers for having me. Happy May Day. Another world is possible by uniting the working class. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tiffany. Always happy to hear from Durham Region and what's happening in Oshawa. Up next, after Tiffany, we've got Mohsen Ebrahimi representing the Workers' Communist Party of Iran. Take it away, Mohsen.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for organizing this event for celebrating May Day. I am a member of Local 79 QP for a long time. I have been involved in union in 2 strikes, once as coordinator in West and East Office, and second time as a co-chair of the strike committee. This May Day coincides with coronavirus pandemic. Capitalists might be thankful to COVID-19 and happy that on this May Day, the virus would prevent the usual show of solidarity on the streets. But they must not be too excited. Pandemic will end. The struggle for better life will resume even stronger than before. Corona pandemic has left no doubt that under capitalism, human life is nothing, profit is everything. Despite the stockpile of weapons enough to destroy the entire earth, there are not enough ventilations, forcing doctors, sadly, to choose who is to get their life-saving treatment. Corona pandemic also left no doubt that the livelihood of around 7.5 billion human beings depends on the works of hundreds of millions of workers. Imagine what would have happened if doctors, nurses, workers in shelters and nursing homes, workers in food industry, and many other branches were not struggling day and night for saving lives. I would like to say a few words about the challenges the working class in Iran are facing now. Under the Islamic Republic of Iran, workers are deprived of any right whatsoever: right to organize, right to strike, right to assembly, right to demonstrate, and right to freedom of expression. Many labor activists have been arrested, tortured, and killed during the reign of Islamic regime. Many are now in prisons for defending basic rights or simply just trying to organize May Day celebrations. With coronavirus threatening prisoners' lives right now, money swindlers are released while political prisoners such as labor activists, socialists, atheists, women's rights activists are kept in prison intentionally to be killed by the virus. On the eve of the upcoming May Day, the security agents of the Islamic regime have launched an intimidation campaign to prevent labor activists from engaging in any protest. However, even those activists in prisons have openly and bravely called upon people to challenge the ruling capitalist and brutal Islamic Republic. The ruling capitalist criminals in Iran are worried because they know with the end of coronavirus, the ongoing political crisis will intensify. The November 2019 uprising in more than 100 cities will return, this time in even more gigantic scale. It has been a long time that an open war has begun between the people and the Islamic Republic of Iran. People have called the supreme leader a murderer and a thug, while the regime has called the people hooligans and agents of the enemy. This is a war of survival on both sides. The people are fighting for their livelihood, dignity, freedom, and equality. The Islamic regime is fighting, struggling to stay in power. Anyone who follows the news in Iran in recent years would have no doubt that immense street protests and workers' strike is impending. An all-out war is on the horizon. In their ongoing class war for overthrowing the Islamic regime, workers, women, and the youth need, deserve, and expect solidarity. Workers, labor leaders, leftists, socialists, and all the people who are concerned about freedom, human dignity, and equality. If the October Revolution turned the political scene of the 20th century in favor of struggle for a better life around the globe, the victory of the socialist revolution in Iran definitely will turn the political scene of the 21st century upside down in favor of the worldwide struggle for a humane, equal, free, and socialist world. Long live May Day, long live socialism. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Very moving. It's always nice to hear from the perspectives and what's going on in Iran. I know that the media here paints us a picture of Iran and what's happening, and we don't get a very clear message. And so, what better way than from a militant trade unionist and somebody who's well informed on what's happening there? Thank you very much. Up next, we have the retired leader, retired activist from the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty. But although I say retired, this individual continues to spread a message of the fight against the system and what it does to the most vulnerable sector of society, the homeless, and continues to be very influential. And that person is John Clark. John Clark, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you, comrades. One of the really important things I think about May Day has always been that it begins with a very practical and immediate struggle for the needs of working class people, a fight for the 8-hour day, a fight to limit capitalist exploitation. And yet at the same time, it's advanced by those who have a perspective not just of improving life within capitalism, but of transforming society. It advances a socialist vision, an anti-capitalist perspective. And at this time, I think that is of particular significance and importance. We face really at least a three-pronged crisis at the moment, a crisis of capitalism that involves, of course, a global pandemic that is dreadful in its consequences and implications, but that leads into it tips over into an economic crisis that even the BBC is comparing to the Great Depression. So an enormous downturn in the economy that's going to have implications for years to come. And sitting over all of that, this ecological crisis, more than a climate crisis, a generalized ecological crisis. And really what I think is posed by all of these things, and we say this on May Day, is that capitalism is no longer simply at odds with the needs of working class people. In a way far greater than it's ever been, it's at odds with human survival. It's at odds with a future for this planet. And so the need for social transformation is enormous. But the only way forward is one of struggle. And right now, we're dealing with a situation where hundreds of millions of people across this planet are seeing sudden, dramatic, and intolerable changes taking place in their own lives. And that's something that really has incredible implications. I see today Lima, Peru, people locked down, starving, taken to the highways because they simply can't survive in the city. I see in Johannesburg, South Africa, a queue for food that is 3 kilometers long. And yet, even in this wealthy city of Toronto, there is hunger. Homeless people have been abandoned to infection at the hands of the virus and left on the streets. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tenants live with the threat of eviction hanging over their heads at the moment. The long-term care facilities are turned into for-profit death traps. And that's the reality in this showpiece wealthy city. Globally, the situation is absolutely grim. So the post-pandemic world that is going to exist is going to be one in which historic and enormous changes have taken place. There is going to be a profound and a deep economic downturn. There is going to be mass unemployment. And the real question is going to be, in that period of crisis, who is going to pay for it? Every effort will be made to impose wage cuts on workers, to attack their unions. The tenants who have somehow got through the lockdown are going to face mass evictions. There's going to be a round of austerity that will make everything that's happened now look relatively incremental. And these are the kind of conditions in which there can be really, for people through their own bitter experiences, a leap in consciousness. This is the kind of situation in which it is possible to think in terms of mass resistance. It's a time to advance fighting demands, and it's a time to advance radical solutions. It's a time to actually say that we're not looking to come out of this with a somewhat better form of capitalism, but advance a very, very different idea of what society should be. So the traditions of May Day at this time, this year, are of particularly enormous importance to all of us. And it's a time when those ideas can resonate with millions of people. Auguste Spies, as he faced death, the Haymarket martyr, said that there'll come a time when our silence will be louder than the voices you strangle here today. That's already true. But that silence and that message of resistance and solidarity that lies behind it, that message of a different kind of society, is in a position now to roar and to affect the thinking and the actions of millions of people. And that's the way forward at this day on May Day 2020. Long live May Day, and long live socialism. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Are you sure you're retired? That was very moving. Sounds like you're still at it. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Up next, I've got a labor leader from out west, president of the third largest district council. It's the president of the new Westminster Labor Council, Stephen Crozier. Take it away, Stephen.
I thank you, Bruno. Yes, I'm really honored to be asked to speak here. I'd like to first thank the organizers of this national event. It's the only one of its kind, and they've shown the initiative, the courage, and the fortitude to host this important occasion on this important day and at this important time in the history of the international workers' movement. They've shown what it takes to start with an idea, develop a plan, and follow through by bringing together various elements of the labor movement in solidarity, the grassroots solidarity that is necessary for workers to succeed in grasping this moment in time and turning it into victory for the working people of this planet and for the planet itself. This is the proverbial golden opportunity, but as an eco-socialist, I would be remiss if I did not add that it is a green one as well. I also want to thank the organizers for allowing me to speak, and in addition, thank all of you who have responded to this call for solidarity and celebration. Let's not forget what has brought us together, and as we go our separate ways, let us remember the bonds we are forming here today. Before going any further, I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the unceded traditional lands of the Semiahmoo people within the Coast Salish territory. On the land we now call Canada, and on the waters that surround it, The first workers were the indigenous peoples. To them, we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude. The treatment they have received is far from the treatment they deserve, to say the very least. We cannot rewrite the past. However, we can and we must deal with the contradictions of the present and hand the pen to the indigenous peoples for them to write their future. How do we embrace the present in other ways in this time of a health pandemic? How do we wrest the power from leaders, be they political, economic, or those within our own unions, who have failed working people, particularly over the past 40 years under neoliberal capitalism? First, we should understand that our leaders must be made and not followed. What do I mean by that? Too often, leaders get into their positions and become more concerned about maintaining power than using it for the benefit of working people. When that happens, do not follow, for it is a time to remove those leaders. We are the grassroots. We make them, and what we make, we can unmake. We have that power. Leaders have only the power we give them. They should listen more than they speak. They should serve, not expect servitude. They should liberate, not restrain. So we must first ask, what kind of leaders do we have? We can only organize with the class struggle leadership. That's why I encourage you to join the Cross-Country Workers' Action Movement, whose candidates for executive of the Ontario Federation of Labor last fall got 36% of the votes at the OFL convention. Change is in the air. The grassroots can make it happen. Secondly, COVID-19 will end, but we know more crises will come. In fact, the climate disaster continues today. However, the disaster that capitalism has become is at the root of these crises. It must die, or we all will perish. This is why I'm calling for socialist measures. Economist Milton Friedman's disaster capitalism must not be part of the post-COVID-19. Disaster capitalism is a disaster. Disaster socialism, taking this opportunity to move forward with socialist action, is the solution. Clearly, observably, during this crisis is that it is not money that makes the world go round. It is workers and our work. Money may grease the wheels, but we turn them. Let us remember that we have the power when it is time for all hands on deck to set those wheels in motion again. We must demand an economy and a world that reflects our values and our power. To this end, I can think of no better maxim than that of Karl Marx: from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. Stay safe, my siblings and friends, in solidarity.
Thank you, Stephen. Very insightful. And I'd like to point out that the candidates who ran at the Ontario Federation of Labor on a socialist platform with the Workers' Action Movement, Kurt Young and Barry Conway, although they didn't win, and I believe that there might have been many people who probably hadn't heard of them before, but coming in new and with their ideas managed to get a third of the room to vote for them. So that is a sign that there is a shift, that there is a demand for that workers and our labor leaders are looking for, that to go to the left and not to stay in the center. Now, up next, I've got from the Left Communist Workers' Party of Iraq, Essam. Essam, enlighten us.
Hi, comrades. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Happy May Day, everyone. My name is Essam Shukri. I'm from the Left Worker Communist Party of Iraq. Back in the day in 2001, 2002, I worked and we fought together against the war on Iraq in Toronto We rallied together. Things have changed dramatically since then. And I left for Iraq to do my work there, and involved in defending the civility and the unity of the people of Iraq against the barbarism that prevailed after the war, the invasion of the US there. Today I send my comrades comradely greetings from my comrades in Iraq, from the working people in Iraq, from the toilers of Iraq and elsewhere. And I send you their good wishes and wishes of good health. This Labor Day, comrades, is celebrated whilst human society is facing two unprecedented crises. One is more dreadful than the other. The first one is the mass death of thousands of people. It's unbelievable as a direct result of infection with the deadly virus. And second is the crisis of unemployment, hunger, starvation, poverty, and insecurity. Hundreds of millions of people who are already below poverty line, whatever the line is. I don't know how they define this, because I believe 100% are under the poverty line, are suffering now probably tenfolds their so-called normal conditions. The COVID-19 virus has severely impacted the elderly, as you know, fragile health people, children, and the originally sick. The people diagnosed with the virus almost reached 2.5 million, while nearly 200,000 people have been killed worldwide. This is a big shame that we let this happen. This is one of the atrocities, the silent atrocity that is being committed against humanity and by the capitalist class. The capitalist system is the main cause and the perpetrator of this situation, including the death of hundreds of thousands. The issue is not related to the trivial question that are circulated in the ultra-right-wing media, which talks about where does it come from geographically, where did we spot the virus, who made it? This is all bollocks. In today, the lack of masks and the simplest means of personal protection, especially for health workers and those working in senior homes, is shameful. It is a fact that 20% own more than 80% of global resources, yet there is a huge lack of testing kits, hospital beds, respirators, or enough health workers due to austerity measures. I'm not talking about Iraq, I'm talking about literally everywhere. 20% or less, we call them in our literature the 1%, is spending billions of dollars on the defense of the corrupt and exploitative system. They spend billions of dollars literally on armies, on weapons to invade countries like Iraq, paid media to spread lies and propaganda and brainwash people's minds, and on religion and its institutions to spread fatalism, division of people, despise of science and rational thinking, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to talk about the destruction of the environment here. Rather than asking who spread the virus or from where did it originate, or increase racial hatred and bigotry as they wish to do, the real question is, as workers are asking, according to what system does this happen? Under what conditions? Who created these conditions? Why isn't there enough protection? Why aren't there enough beds for the sick people? Why nurses have to make this inhumane choice, who to die and who to live? Who is responsible for creating inequality that resulted in the death of millions of people, or infection of millions of people, but less than 1 million people died? These are the questions that being the workers around the world and the workers are asking. In Iraq, the society is suffering from the rule of religious, sectarian, nationalist, and ethnic militias, lack of civil society and rights. Iraq society face an epidemic silently due to lack of any governmental service whatsoever. No governmental support for the Iraqi people. They give them 30,000 Iraqi dinars, which is about $100. $180 a month for a family, and are forced to stay home with no income. In addition to the risk of COVID-19, in addition to the lack of proper hospitals, modern and equipped healthcare facilities, efficient equipment, healthcare trained workers, we lack that in Iraq. Iraqi people have nothing like that. If you see the hospitals in Iraq, you would be surprised. After 17 years of invasion of Iraq, they put the beds on blocks of concrete to stand. And the looters. Sorry.
I regret to inform you, if you could wrap it up, please.
Sure. Our party, comrades, believe that the overthrow of the capitalist system must be placed at the top of the priorities of the struggle of the working class in Iraq, Iran, and all over the world. We call upon all freedom-loving forces in society, the socialists, the communists, egalitarian, all secularists, and those who believe in equality of women and men. This is a very big point in Iraq, to stand up and confront this barbaric system. Comrades, I have a lot to say. I really appreciate the opportunity that these comrades gave me, Jahan, Tai, and Bruno, and long live May Day to all, and long live socialism. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assam. Yes, and it's true. It's 5 minutes is nowhere near enough to get the valuable information we need from the perspectives of the different speakers. It's unfortunate, but it's also a good problem to have, because we have so many speakers. And the perspectives coming from a socialist perspective, coming from Iraq, is precisely what we needed here. I'd like to, oh, sorry, my screen there. Yes, so the next speaker we have, coming from a rich history, an organization with rich history of trade union work, syndicalism, coming from the international workers of the world. We've got Elio Trossi. Go ahead, Elio.
Hello, everyone, and happy May Day. My name is Elliot Rossi. I'm a member of the Toronto branch of the Industrial Workers of the World, and I'm also an organizer with CUPW Local 10-4 Foodsters United. A year ago today, Local 10-4 officially revealed itself to the public. We started the day speaking to media at our press conference. We then headed to Queen's Park for the May Day rally. And finally, we got on our bikes and in our cars and took over downtown streets, including a spectacular march on Foodora's head office. It was probably one of the most fun and exciting experiences of my entire life. 1 week shy of a year later, Delivery Hero pulled Foodora out of Canada. In 11 days, I'm going to lose the job I've had for the past 5 years. I'm deeply disappointed by this, but I cannot say I'm especially surprised. Foodora had been in trouble for a long time. They consistently frustrated their customers and restaurant partners with their incompetence, and they were consistently indifferent to worker grievances largely related to the company's rudderlessness. We gave them many opportunities to work together to fix a number of very basic problems with their business as usual. But instead, they elected to pour money into anti-union public relations and legal battles. In the end, they decided they would simply rather not exist than be forced to make some very minor concessions and, by extension, to run a viable business. Now, a lot of us are justifiably dismayed that Delivery Hero would pull the rug out from under our feet like this. They've taken our ability to collectively bargain, but they can't take away the new legal precedent for classifying gig economy workers as dependent contractors that we won. Nor can they take away what was learned from our organizing efforts up to this point. Not only was it the first ever attempt at a certified gig economy union local, but for many of us, it was our first union drive, myself included. We now have a group of passionate and hardworking organizers ready to take on whatever comes next. Whatever comes next is going to be very weird for pretty much everyone. COVID has made it effectively impossible for capitalism to continue. And while market economies are being temporarily kept afloat by government stimulus and cheap debt, they cannot be sustained much longer. People are scared and angry as a result. They're realizing that capitalists have lied to them all their lives, and they're going to want answers. And We in the labor movement have many of those answers, and we need to be ready to educate, inoculate, and organize ever-increasing numbers of our agitated friends and neighbors. We need to do this on an unprecedented scale using all of the tools we have, whether or not they are accounted for by our laws. Make no mistake, we will be under attack every step of the way. We will be attacked no matter what we say, whether we are civil or whether we raise hell. We will be told that our organizing efforts are a pipe dream and that a better world is not possible. These criticisms are disingenuous and deserve to be ignored. The couriers were told we would never attract interest from the mainstream labor movement, and we did. They told us we would never get 40% of our workforce to sign a union card, and we did. They told us we would lose in the first round of labor board hearings because independent contractors can't form unions, and we won decisively. We were on track to win one of the largest victories in recent labor movement history until the company took its ball and went home. We organized, fought, and won. We were and are unstoppable, and every day we have less and less to lose. And I'm seeing people outside who are sick of being lied to, are being told that the only thing they can do right now is stay home and sit on their hands, and that's not enough. So I want to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. And for that reason, I say, let's go get him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elliot. And I'd like to apologize for getting your name wrong there. Elliot Rossi from the International Workers of the World. Up next, we've got a musician, Brian, who's going to perform Which Side Are You On? Take it away, Brian.
Okay, thank you, Bruno. Actually, Muhammad Ali will introduce.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Tell me which side, which side, which side? Which side has the sight of my comrades? Which side, which side, which side? Which side has the sight of my comrades? We the working class, the help wanted ads. We the critical mass, the capitalism we will outlast. Tell me which side, which side, which side? Which side has the sight of my comrades? We the workers, we the power. We make the bread, we pick the flowers. To pay the rent, we'll break our backs. To pay them back, we'll break their banks. Let's break bread, let's take a break. With these chains, we will break. Tell me which side, which side, which side? Which side has the sight of my comrades? Which side, which side, which side? Which side has the sight of my comrades?
Thank you, Muhammad. This is a classic labor tune written in the 30s out of a mining struggle. So just take it away. Side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you? Which side are you? Daddy was a miner, and I'm a miner's son. I'll stick with the union till every battle's won. They say in Holland County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a union man or a thug for J.H. Blair. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you? Which side are you? Down and then you stand it. Oh, tell me if you can. Will you be a lousy scab? Or will you be a man? Boots cap for the bosses. Don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you? Which Which side are you? Which side are you? Which side are you? Which side are you? Which side are you on?
All right, that was awesome. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Muhammad Ali, once again. Now that song does remind us in these current struggles that there is no middle. You're either on the side of the enemy or on the side of the workers. And so this May Day, any May Day event, May Day represents just that, the revolutionary side of the labor movement, not the middle, the left. Now, up next, we've got the president of the Ontario School Board Council of Unions, Laura Walton. Laura Walton is continuing to go through a lot up against this nasty government. And I'm sure you've heard there was a strike that almost happened. And just in the last minute, we avoided that. We didn't face any cuts to our working conditions or to our salaries. In fact, it remained the same. And this must be seen as a victory. Under a conservative government, we proved that they were weak with the leadership of Laura Walton. Take it away, Laura.
Thanks so much, Bruno. And I want to thank you for the invite for coming and speaking to everyone here today on May Day. As Bruno mentioned, I am Laura Walton, and I am the president of the Ontario School Board Council of Unions. And I'm speaking to you today from my home in Belleville, which is part of the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people. On behalf of 55,000 QP education workers, I'm sending warm May Day greetings and solidarity to all of our fellow unionists and activists. A heartfelt thank you to everyone on the front lines during this pandemic. It's your service that keeps us united, and it's keeping us safe. But there's no getting away from the fact that this is a pretty unusual May Day. In Ontario, years of austerity are coming home to roost. COVID-19 has exposed the terrible weaknesses in our public services. There are mass layoffs among our fellow workers. Governments are using emergency powers to trample on the rights of workers. Big businesses are getting lavish handouts while workers are getting crumbs. And once again, the most vulnerable amongst us are paying the highest of prices and facing the greatest of dangers. It feels like we've lost much of our power, and it might seem like there's little to celebrate. I believe, though, that we can emerge from this crisis stronger, more determined, and better organized than ever before. From this pandemic, we are learning that our labor is what connects us. On so many levels, we are all workers. And when the pandemic recedes, and it's going to, we are going to demand that we are owed what we are owed as workers and as citizens. We need to demand high quality public services, properly funded and properly publicly delivered by workers who are respected and valued. Because there's something else that I have learned and what we have learned from living with COVID-19 is that we're only healthy when we are all healthy. We're only safe when every single one of us is safe. Our services only work when they work for everyone. And I'm proud to say that QB education workers understand this concept. They're constantly amazing me and inspiring me to continue because during this pandemic, they keep showing up. They show up in the work like Bruno is doing here today to bring this forward. They're showing up to maintain schools during shutdowns. They're donating PPE to those who are in need. They're volunteering time at local food banks. They're finding creative ways to support children who are learning at home. Because the one thing that this COVID pandemic has really shone a light on is the inequitable nature of what education looks like when it's not done within a public school system. QP education workers are determined to make their contribution. Like workers everywhere, they're leading the way. So as we head off today, I'm already starting to look forward to the next May Day. And I'm hoping that it'll be an opportunity where we can come together and see each other in person. Once these strange days are behind us, and once we've used the coming year to make gains that we have waited for, I think these are gains that we all deserve. Until then, I'm wishing everyone on behalf of the education workers in QP a very happy May Day for 2020. Thank you.
Oh, Bruno, are you there? All right, looks like we temporarily lost Bruno there, but I'll take over. Thank you, Laura, for that speech. Next up, I have Tynan Liebert from the executive of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 2. Tynan, you ready to go? Go ahead, Tynan.
Sisters and brothers, what an honor and a privilege it is to address the first May 1st International Workers' Day rally in Toronto, to be organized with support from a broad coalition of unions. That is a huge step forward, and I want to thank everyone who helped the Labor May Day Committee make that a reality. We've taken a huge step forward, and we've got a long way to go. And in these trying times, it might look impossible, but let's all remember, we're the working class. We're the people that built this world with our bare hands. We make it happen. We make the trains move. We get the masks built in the factories. We pave the roads. It all comes down to the international working class. And it doesn't matter where in the world you're from. We're abused by the employers. We're exploited by them. And we're made to think that we need them. That's what they put in our heads with their domination of the state, the government, and the media. We produce everything for them. But then we are convinced that we are the ones that need them, and nothing could be further from the truth. We do the work, we know how things get done, and one day we will run this society ourselves. The working class will become the ruling class, and there will no longer be any more need for class divisions. We will have a society without exploitation, without the oppression of one nationality over another, without the humiliation and degradation that we've come to accept as normal, as human nature in this sick and twisted society of the employers. Now, the first time I ever got to attend a mass May 1st rally backed by the unions in this country was not, in fact, in Canada at all. It was in Quebec. You often hear that May Day is not celebrated in Canada, but there's a strong union-backed labor rally in Quebec every year. We have to ask ourselves, because that's often when we hear about mass militant strikes going on, we hear about our sisters and brothers in Quebec, and what is it that makes their movement more organized and militant than ours? And that is the proud tradition of class struggle against national oppression, of resistance to Canadian domination and to exploitation by Anglo-American finance capital, a movement of working class resistance that is bound up with Quebec's historic struggle to break free from the crown and form an independent country. That is part of the revolutionary tradition of this country, and it is the revolutionary tradition of the working class. And those of us on the English side of the divide are often made to feel that it's not relevant to us, but it is absolutely necessary for our struggle against the common enemy, which are the employers, the property class, for whom the Canadian state is the apparatus of repression that ensures we are all exploited. In order to break that apparatus of oppression, we need the working class to seize power, liberate the oppressed nation of Quebec, bring full autonomy for all Indigenous peoples, and then we can have a workers' government where people will have what they need. So the cause of the working class internationally is the cause of the oppressed nations as well. That's why we say workers of the world and oppressed people unite. And it's not just about North America. National liberation extends to the peoples of Africa, South America, and Asia, places where neocolonial exploitation knows no bounds, is not held in by the supposed civility of the so-called civilized and modern world. And it is the liberation of those brothers and sisters in Africa, South America, and Asia, which must be the cause of the international working class. That is the true meaning of May Day. Liberation of the international working class,
total human freedom from all forms of oppression. And it is a cause which echoes from the dock workers of Sasebo, Japan, to their sisters and brothers in Vladivostok, Russia, to the car manufacturers and call center operators of India, to workers of all professions across the European continent, down through South America, and up to where we are here. And it is on in Canada, and specifically in Toronto, where the Labour May Day Committee is based for now, that I want to speak to a particular situation confronting workers where I work, the Toronto Transit Commission, in the electrical trades. My union is not here officially as an endorser. However, our members are up against exactly the same kind of problems that we heard Carlos Santos from ATU 113 speak about. Our sisters and brothers in ATU 113 are up against the same things we are. We are on the front lines. We're working in the tunnels or on moving trains and high voltage electricity, and we don't have N95 masks. We're put in conditions where social distancing is not possible. And the only recourse, legal recourse given to us, work refusals, is completely stacked by the courts, the Ministry of Labor, which are just weapons in the arsenal of the employer. Every time you put in a work refusal, and Carlos said it, and I'm going to say it too because it's important, the ministry, they don't even show up. They get you on the phone. They tell the employer, forget it, these guys are going to go back to work. You know, dear union leader, self-isolate. I think that says a lot right there. So it goes to show that we cannot win if we're playing by the boss's rules. You know, it was through May Day, through militant struggles of the working class, that we made our own rules. And that's how we took a step forward. And remember, May Day was for the 8-hour day. That was at a time when it was normal for the workday to be 16 hours. The modern equivalent would be 20 hours work for 40 hours pay. 20 hours work for 40 hours pay. That is how radical the tradition of May Day is. And that's what we're bringing back. That's the work the Labour May Day Committee is doing. So the cause of the working class internationally is the cause of the struggle against imperialism and liberation of oppressed nations all around the world, and for basic dignity and freedom for those of us on the front lines of industry right at home. So, you know, one more time, I want to thank sisters, brothers, comrades who we work together with to make this event reality. We, the international working class, times might be bleak, but the future is ours. Our day will come. Okay? There will be workers' governments. There will be total human freedom. There will be a society without exploitation. Sisters and brothers, this is Tynan Liebert, oppositional member of the executive board of CUPE Local 2, electrical workers at the Toronto Transit Commission. Could not be more proud to be with you here today. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Brother Bruno Petraglia, who's introduced everyone, but he hasn't had an introduction. When school support workers in CUPE were crossing the picket lines of teachers, and it was supposed to be hush-hush and polite, Bruno raised his voice about it and was smacked down by the leaders of his union. And I think what the brother did was very honorable. We heard the song, Which Side Are You On? That's all about the picket line question, a line that's drawn in blood between the exploiting class and us, the exploited. And if we're going to turn the labor movement around, we need to start respecting the sanctity of the picket line, because sisters and brothers, that's our militant tradition. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you to the other comrades here. And I'll turn it over to, I guess it's our last speaker, but it's Bruno will introduce him. Solidarity.
Thank you, Brother Tynan. Thank you. And yes, I'm a bit shy about that, but this is true. I did call out the scab policies that were going on at the beginning of December over at my local. There was a lot of picket line crossing when the OSSTF had its workers out there on strike. Now, the next speaker is coming up, but I'd like to remind everyone we're almost finished at 7 o'clock. So we're gonna have the president of the Toronto Local of Canadian Union of Postal Workers, Kaiser Marouf.
Oh, sorry, you forgot Mike Layton. He's gonna go right before.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry about that. Mike Layton. And I will just quickly remind everyone, although you already know, Mike Layton is a Toronto City Councillor, and he has agreed to come and speak to everyone here. Thank you, Mike.
Well,
Take it away.
Thank you very much, brother. My apologies. I was in and out trying to cook dinner and alleviate some of the pressure on our household that COVID's put on us. First, I'd like to gratefully acknowledge that I'm bringing greetings today from the territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, including the Inuit and the Métis people. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered mostly by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Brothers and sisters, let me first acknowledge secondly, acknowledge that we thank all of the frontline workers that are helping us just get by through this crisis. That yes, the nurses and doctors and the care workers on the front lines, our EMS, but the long-term care, personal care workers, the shelter workers, the warehouse workers, the waste management workers, the seasonal farm workers, the TTC drivers and maintenance staff, the truck drivers, the grocery store clerks, the cooks and the dishwashers, the food delivery drivers. We are now redefining the value of the worker in society. And I think this crisis has given us a lot to reflect on about how we acknowledge and how we treat those many different individuals. Now, our city is faring better than most, I'll admit. Many in our city are faring quite well, but there are a lot that are struggling. And the only reason why that bit of people can fare well like this is because of the hard work of others. And more often than not, they're taken advantage of. And this includes city workers. This includes many of the people that are working a minimum wage or close to minimum wage jobs. And that's why this May Day gives sort of extra significance, I think, in the global scheme. And I think it's certainly getting a lot of people that would not have thought about the role of workers at the margins in society, giving them cause to pause and think about how we value work. You know, the pressure of COVID is exposing weaknesses. And where they're exposing them is at our margins. Our seniors, those that need housing, those that are struggling with addiction, those that are working paycheck to paycheck. It's becoming more and more clear that in our wealthy and prosperous society, there are still those that 1 week, 2 weeks out, despite the fact that they're employed, they don't have any security. And they don't have, or they have fewer rights than many. How can we expect to be able to rely on a food system where workers along the way can't even take a day off because they're sick? That is ridiculous. And the good thing, and if I can paint a silver lining on it, and I hate to try to do it now as we're in the midst of it, but if I can give it a silver lining, it's that more and more people are talking about it. Now, I represent some of the most affluent parts of the country with Rosedale. I also represent some of the most impoverished parts of the country. But those people in the sections of this country that are the most well off are starting to realize more and more that our society, their wealth is in fact dependent on the well-being of others. Now, that's a good spot to be when we're talking about a move towards social democracy and socialism. That is a powerful space to be. But it hinges on one thing. Too often, far too often, weeks and months and years after one of these economic crises happens, we forget. And governments fall back into the position of the status quo. It's a safe place. It is for them. It's a very safe place. So we have to challenge that. And this is our chance. This is our chance to break the status quo and not go back to business as usual. Think about it for a moment. What would the world be like if we were to rebuild in a different light? Does Toronto have the highest rate of child poverty in the country? No, it wouldn't. There would be no child poverty. Do kids go to school hungry? No, they don't. We'd have universal school programs. Do teachers struggle to give the support they need with growing class sizes? No, they don't. Because we have appropriately invested in public education. Do students graduate with crushing debt so that they become slaves to banks or to the gig economy? No, they don't, because we have universal post-secondary education. Are workers commodities or are they community? Do people need to choose between paying rent and purchasing food or becoming homeless? No, they don't. Do the top 1% continue to control over 90% of the wealth? Well, of course not. Now, does capitalism continue to trump the future of our society and our culture and our planet? No, it doesn't. Now, these are some of the frames that we need to put on whatever comes out of this crisis. Changing we head to what is fair and what we want won't come just by tinkering from the margins. It happens only from transformative change. We need to rebalance society, the economy, and the environment. So how do we do that? We do that by challenging the institutions that got us here. Now, I hear you. I don't miss the irony here. I'm part of the government institutions that need to, in fact, change. And I hope that I've made some kind of positive change in the Toronto context. But I acknowledge that I need to, and we need to do collectively more. So as our governments formulate the path to recovery, let us pressure them. Let us insist. Let us force them to ensure that the recovery doesn't return us to the status quo, but it is just for workers. It is just for the homeless. It is just for those living at the poverty line. It addresses equality, racism. It addresses colonialism, and it addresses our environmental and climate crisis. Thank you very much. Happy May Day. I'm so sorry that I had to be in and out today, but I really have appreciated what I've heard from the other speakers today, and that all of you are contributing and participating. Thank you very much. Solidarity.
Oh, Bruno, you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted there. I was just saying thank you, Mike. That was excellent, great words there, and thank you for coming out to the event and speaking to everyone here. Now we've got one last speaker. Last but not least, he is the president of the Toronto Local of Canadian Union of Postal Workers. We've got Kaiser Marouf. Go ahead, Kaiser.
Hello, comrades. Happy May Day. And I'm speaking from the traditional territories of Erie, Huron-Wendat, and Haudenosaunee and Abenaki land. I'm speaking from the land which is the home of many Indigenous people from across the Turtle Island. Postal workers, we are very proud, and our couriers, we are very proud to serve our communities during this pandemic time. We are helping Canadians to stay home and flatten the curve, and we are supporting the economy during this time of uncertainty. we have the pride on it. But the pandemic, we all talk about this coronavirus that has killed more than 2,300,000. So the lesson to be learned, and in one word, I can say that capitalism is a crime. No job at all, or a job without enough protection. Today, workers are trapped between hunger and fear. Workers are underpaid next to slavery. Workers demand a fair wage so that they can enjoy dignity of the work. This is an unprecedented situation, and people are stressed and concerned. We take this seriously, and our locals of Canadian Union Postal Workers are keeping a close eye on this situation within our communities. Social stewards are available in the floors to connect workers. We have a website to educate our members and also have all the resources available. But as a postal worker, we are in the front line, we are delivering, we are moving the mail, and we are serving our fellow citizens. But the government is so blatant and arrogant. They need to come up. And as you mentioned, all other speakers, that 1% cannot rule over 90%. As a labor activist myself, I believe that we can do it, and we will do it. As we said, that power to the people and solidarity forever. Let's have a united front. Let's have a solid dialogue. Let's have a world where workers are united and stand together. And let's have a working class, not a ruling class. Brothers and sisters, this is the time. We, the workers, need to be more united in this first ever May Day rally online to show our support to the working class people that we are all united. We cannot be sold out. Our lives are more important than the profit to this capitalist world. Let's stay together, let's stay stronger, and let's have a solid dialogue. Let's have a strike. As we speak today, there is a strike going on back in the States. Let's have a national day of protest in Canada, and let's show the power of the people which will rule by the people. In solidarity, Kaiser. Thank you, brother.
Solidarity, Kaiser. Thank you. Very insightful. Now, before we wrap up here, there's a bit of confusion here. I want to touch back on the scabbing policy. This was a call came from Laura Walton, the president of the Ontario School Board Council of Unions, to defy, at the time of the teacher strike, to defy the rules and to not cross the picket lines that the teachers were forming. Unfortunately, the locals, the way the system is set up is that the locals do have some autonomy in this respect, and our local chose not to follow this call. And so, this was a defiance on my end against my local executive, not that of the Ontario School Board Council of Unions. Moving on now. Before we wrap up, I believe there's a plug-in from the brother who spoke earlier, Elliot Rossi, on the Foodora workers. So I'll just give the space for the plug-in to happen for Elliot Rossi.
Hey guys, thanks again for letting me jump in at the end and just say this. Some of you may know we have set up the Courier Union has set up a hardship fund for all of my coworkers that are going to be in a lot of trouble pretty soon because we're all losing our jobs in 11 days. So if anybody has a couple of extra bucks they'd love to pitch in, I'd really appreciate it. I'm going to be fine, thankfully, but I know a lot of people who aren't. So that can be found at fundraiser.com. Fundraiser.com. That's fund, RAZR.com/Foodsters United. That's all I got. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Elliot. And we've also got another plug-in from our comrades out in Quebec. They are going to give us, well, a presentation from their perspective.
Yeah, so just for the folks, I can plug in for them. There's at 7:15 p.m. There's an event in Quebec celebrating May Day happening. I will post the link in the Facebook page. I'll give it back to you, Bruno, so you can wrap up.
Ah, okay, perfect. Thank you, Jahan. So you've all seen it: militant trade unionists, union leaders, rank and file workers, artists, all coming together on May Day, giving you their insight, their perspective on the struggle against the bosses. Now, this doesn't end here. This continues. This is just one of many forms of expression that we have in our fight, in our struggle. And so from today, I want everyone here moving forward to continue that fight, to keep the spirit going, keep the flame going, and organize, always. And I want to thank everyone for coming out, and everyone have a happy May Day. Take care.